Start the clock.
Good afternoon. At the tone, time will
Okay, thank you very much. We have a very special show for you tonight, and to prove it, my first guest is the Grammy-winning, multi-platinum selling rapper, producer, business mogul, and clothing salesman, and a fragrance. Do you have a fragrance, Jay? A little bit. He's also got a perfume whose reputation as the guy to beat in hip-hop will, I'm sure, be further cemented this September 11th when his new one, The Blueprint 3, comes out. Please welcome Jay-Z! Thank you. How are you? Great. Thank you very much. Jay-Z! What's up? It's cool. People love you. Even women, after all the things you've said in your records. They don't hold it against you. They still love you.
There's a lot of complexities in music.
Is that how you explain it to them?
Because it doesn't really mean anything.
Well, actually, your music means a lot to a lot of people.
No, I'm not the music. I meant that line.
So a lot of people, I think, first got interested in rap music when those East Coast, West Coast wars went on. And that was when you were starting out. I mean, you were new to the game at that point in the
pretty much.
What do you remember about that period, and what do you take away from it?
I remember the media, they're mishandling, like everyone blames the media, right?
Well, they should.
It's the mishandling of it, because the dangers of that situation, because it's not, you got to figure, Biggie and Tupac, they're making records. You know, they're no longer, in the street every single day. But they have friends and they have their crew is still there, and their ego is being put on the line. So now, when you see someone from the rival camp, something had better happen, because now it's everywhere and everyone's looking at you like, you're Tupac's guy, you better say something,
So you think it was media stoked?
Yeah, I think it was something real there in the beginning, but once ego and the flame got fanned, it became something really violent and something.
But there are a lot of feuds.
Yeah, but that's well, hip hop is based on competition. In the beginning, the DJ was the star. I'm gonna take you through a long, maybe too long history. I'll give you the bridge version. The DJ was the star. The MC was his job was to say how great the DJ was. So you had to be a great enough MC that the DJ would allow you to get on the mic to say how great he was. So, it's true. So what happened is, that feud, that competition. So it was born out of artistic competition. But then when people start getting in the business and it started becoming profitable, it started becoming a hustle for some certain people, including myself, and in the beginning. And so now you have that thing. Now it's no longer about just the integrity of how good you can put words together. It's when you say that person is whatever you say about them, now you're putting their manhood to the test, and it became something else, something dark.
It did seem contrived, some of the feuds.
Yeah, it became a marketing ploy after a while, and it became comical.
But you've had a lot of feuds. But you seem to get out of them. You seem to get out of them before they get violent.
Yeah, yeah. Smart.
Yeah, you're smart. You are smart, yes. I think everyone would agree with that. And you must be smart because you're almost 40. You're in
December.
And you're in a young man's game, and you're still at the top of that game.
Yeah.
Can you still be a revolutionary when you are rich and when you're, surrounded by security and?
I probably could beat up all the rappers. That helped, but really.
Still, you think if they took away the security and they took away the money, you could still put on the cape and be Captain Save-A-Ho?
Well, I wouldn't use those words.
Well, you know what I mean.
I think what I've done and what I've done with my, starting out with my first album is related to a real emotion, and truth. I put truth in front, and that is, without age, without color, without genre, without anything, whether it be for a young guy aspirational or be for an older guy something that they can relate to. Once you draw on a true emotion, I mean, it's entertainment at the end of the day, but once you draw on a true emotion, I think, the integrity of that, will carry you through to now.
Charles Barkley once famously said that he did not want to be a role model. But whether you want it or not, you are a huge role model. I mean, for a guy who is middle-aged, you have enormous...
You talking about me?
Numbers are numbers, Jay.
Men lie, women lie, numbers
Yeah,
don't.
believe me, I know. But you have enormous credibility with people half your age, which is not, especially in music, that does not happen a lot. Or do you take more responsibility?
My responsibility is to the culture. My job is to show it in a great light, so I guess I'm a role model in that way. But as far as the way I live my life, I'm a human being. If I want to, drink champagne one night or smoke weed with you.
But I thought you didn't smoke weed.
I don't, but I was just using that as an example.
Yeah, because you're all about focus.
Yeah.
And you would think that would rob you of focus.
You seem pretty focused.
Well...
You're not high, are you?
No, I have too much respect for you to be high for the interview. I want to talk about your process because I think people would be interested in how you work. I certainly am. I've been a fan for a long time since you came out. And what I heard is that you don't use notes when you get on the mic and you record. You're not reading off of anything.
What happened with that was I used to write so much as a kid. I would write tirelessly, like, it was something that I would love to do. So I didn't look at the hours. So I would write all the time. And then when I start, getting further and further away from the house, these ideas and thoughts would come to my mind. Would typically do during like 3 o'clock, except I wouldn't be in the house, I would be outside. So I have to run in the store and write stuff down, then put it in my pocket and save it till I got back in the house where I could transfer it. And, that builds up your memory. So I start memorizing songs, and then I have 1 song, and then 3 songs, and then it just became part of my process when I go in the studio. So it's not something that I do that's off top of the head. I'll listen to the song or the track. I'll listen to the track 1,000 times if it takes, and I'll formulate the song, then I go in the studio and just do it. I never write it down.
Your earlier stuff, you seem to speak a lot faster.
Yeah.
You seem to be trying to get a lot more words in. Seems like maybe later on you found out that less is more.
I just had so much to say. I had so many different emotions that were going on with me, and I wanted to say it all. And I believed that I was making 1 album. So I got like 100 fake retirement. It's not funny, man.
And you have talked about retirement before.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, because when people can do something so well, they're never really going to retire. I mean, Michael Jordan retired and he went, oh, what the fuck am I doing? I'm great at this.
Right.
I should do it until they drag me off, and they did.
Right.
I mean, he was a fat jump shooter for the Washington Wizards at the end. Really was. But you're not, but what you do,
right.
You could do until you're 100.
Yeah, because then doesn't require your knees.
You don't even have to
For
say
some of us.
Right. Oh, who are you thinking of? No, I'm kidding.
I don't want to start East Coast, West
No,
Coast.
no, you don't want to start that again. Here's something I thought was fascinating. You said, and I'm sure it's true because it came from the horse's mouth, that you've had 10 #1 albums, but no #1 singles, because people appreciate the body of work.
Yeah, I just don't think I made a great enough song that the whole world gravitated to. But
That's
the
what you
album,
think?
yeah. But my concentration is making a body of work. I know people listen to music. I mean, even myself, I make these playlists. You know, I know people listen to music differently and listen to all types of music, and that format is a dying thing. But I still go about making my music as an album. It takes me months just to sequence a song. Like, I think about how a person that will buy my album, how they would listen to the song. And I mean, as far as tempo and emotion and feeling, you know, it's a real thought out process for me. And I don't put that much thought into this.
And the words, I mean, you know, people may not all be fans of rap music, but if they study it all, they would have to give it up that there is a lot more that goes into lyrics in hip-hop music than in rap, than in popular music. I mean, popular music, the lyrics are very often I mean, you could write them down on, like, you know,
Napkin.
a napkin.
Yeah.
And people.
They're good sometimes, but you can't.
Sometimes they are,
Yeah.
but a lot of times they're embarrassing.
Yeah. Because it's a fine line. If you miss it, you miss on the side of cheese.
Cheese not
That's
making money,
true.
you mean, you know, corny.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Wendy's commercials.
Right.
Some rap sounds like Wendy's commercial.
Yeah. But popular music, like, you know, the kind of music I grew up with, I mean, it was much more about the song. If the song was good, it didn't really matter what the lyrics were. But rap music, I mean, it is much more about what you're saying.
Very true.
And that's why I prepared for you. I don't know if anybody has ever done this for you.
Never.
But I thought
I don't even know what it is.
It's the Bible. That's why it has a big B. No, it's not the Bible. That's for Brooklyn. It's every one of your lyrics
Wow.
ever printed out. And look at how much you have written.
Wow. That's fantastic. Oh, man, thank you. Oh, that's great, man. Thank you. I had to check to make sure it was really you.
It's really you.
Yeah.
Look
at this.
Nobody ever, did you ever realize that you had written that much? That's just what you've put, the songs that have come out.
My friends tell me I yap a lot. I ain't know I yap this much.
You do. So many of your lyrics are clever, you know, and the rhymes are clever. And I just wonder, how long does it take you to get to the end of one song? Because obviously it doesn't just come.
Well, yeah, it does.
Really?
That's really what
you just
happened.
vomit out the whole song as
Yeah,
it is?
sometimes. Yeah, really in 5 minutes sometimes. The
Fuck
first
me.
Blueprint album.
That's
The first Blueprint album I made was in 3 days. I made 9 songs in 3 days, which ended up being an album, which was, you know, considered as a classic to this day. But thank you. What happened early on, I didn't recognize it as a gift. My mom always told me, you know, whatever you work, you know that cliche, you work, whatever you put into it, you get out of it. And it's true to some extent, but when you tell a kid that, you know, especially my mom, who was very impressionable on me, I took that to heart. So as these lyrics would come so easily, I would, you know, that's why I put it to the side for so long, because I thought that, you know, it came easy, it must not be anything. You understand?
I do. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this has a lot to do with what President Obama said a couple of weeks ago when he said, he was talking to the NAACP, and he said, you know, you can't all be rappers and ballers.
That's right.
I mean,
True.
I think we put way too much emphasis on the few people who have that gift.
Right.
And we make a lot of people think that they can rise up to that, and they just can't.
Yeah. And really, it's because, I mean, after the gift has been bestowed on you, these guys work extremely hard.
You do.
Yeah, I mean, I shot a video at 8 in the morning yesterday, got on a plane and came straight here.
So here's one of your lyrics. You said, I was raised by one rule, never get caught slipping.
Well, yeah.
You still feel that way? I know you made a lot of comparisons between the rap game and the crack game, or the cocaine, selling cocaine, your old business.
Yeah.
And
It wasn't bad.
no, I mean, the record business probably seems a little corrupt compared to it.
Well, only the integrity, like when you speak to people, you know, and that, my former life, you know, that held huge consequences. You know, now people hide behind lawyers, so they just tell you one thing. They tell you anything to get you out of the room. So it's just
In the record business.
in the record business. So it creates so much confusion, and there's so many snakes and different things. But
What's going to happen?
But it's a great business.
Yeah, it is when you're on top. I mean, that's true of, you know, all of show business. It's good for the 0.05%.
Right.
Everybody else, it sucks.
It's a job.
It's a really good job if you're at that point.
Well, it's even a great job for people who are not at that point. I mean,
Really?
yeah.
You, you really, if you were like the third lead on a sitcom that just got canceled, you think that would be great?
There are clubs you could get into.
Oh, Jay-Z, you're too good for me. I can't. So, you also, let me give you another lyric that I used to love. I ain't crossover, I brought the suburbs to the hood.
Yeah.
I mean, that,
It's a thing about maintaining integrity. You know, you want to expose the world to your experience and your plight and whatever thing that's going on in your form of entertainment. You know, some people choose to change who they are to get there, but, you know, I don't. I think if you're successful as someone else, I think that's the worst thing to be successful at. To be successful at.
but, I mean, as you grew as an artist, you certainly, your stuff was not as raw as it was when you first came out.
Neither was my experiences. You know, now
Right.
I'm on Bill Maher's, like, nice people. I feel,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not as edgy.
No. Right. But, and you like working
But
with...
that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean about the truth. Like my experiences, like in my first album, those are real experiences that I went through. I really made that album to impress my friends. It wasn't even made for a wide range of people. It was made for people in that lifestyle, and it was coded in slang and things that people didn't know unless you really lived that life. So I didn't make this album as a commercial album. I made it to impress my friends. So the albums that I make now, my experiences are broader. So they have, you know, a wider appeal.
Let me throw out some names and just get your reaction from people you've known and worked with. Biggie.
He was a great friend of mine and an extraordinary talent and very charismatic person. Really tragic.
You used to say he was the best,
I still believe that.
even against you.
I mean, like, I thought when you ask for people other than yourself.
Tupac.
Another passionate, very fiery, passionate performer. One of the best as well.
He would have been huge if he had.
Yeah, I
because
think-
he had that great looks and movies.
Well, I think that, yeah, he would have been a huge star.
President Obama. Now, why don't we show the little thing we put together? This is you doing your famous song, Dirt Off My Shoulder, and then into President Obama, which I think is an amazing cultural moment for America.
Forget that boy told you kid. Yeah, turn up your shoulders. I probably owe it to you.
You know, you've just got to kind of let it.
What did you think when you saw that?
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's
But it's wow.
yeah, because
Right? I mean, but that feeling is how everyone felt in every urban environment, because for so long we wasn't included in the process of America.
but just the fact that so many people, he just did that and they all knew what he was referring to. I mean, by reference, it was.
Yeah, but I
quite a-
think that's what I'm saying. I think it was a larger thing working. I mean, you know, this music that we all share, you know, and here's the leader of the free world who's now sharing this music with us
Right.
and not afraid to say it, you know, was a very cool moment for us.
Kanye West,
Genius.
genius, you would call him.
Yeah,
Wow.
genius.
He is good,
Yeah.
but not as good as you.
Well, I'm just saying.
That song he did for you,
Yeah.
that gets you, right? I mean, every time you hear that, that must be that line about when you like somebody, when you admire somebody, tell them. You know,
Yeah, I
people
thought-
only get flowers when they can't smell them.
Yeah.
That's a good line, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's a genius. I think he's a genius. But yeah, that song, Big Brother, was, you know, because it was just such an honest moment for him. It was such a genius thing. I mean, I think it's, for me, the second, I mean, not because he was talking about me, but I think it's the second greatest song he made since Jesus Walk. I think Jesus Walk is by far the greatest song he wrote. They played Jesus Walks in the club while they were drinking alcohol. I mean, to do that is, and he said it in the song.
Well, we don't really know what Jesus did. And Kanye West he produced most of this new album of yours.
Yeah, he set the groundwork for it, yeah.
Wow. How was that?
It was fantastic because the first, he actually was pretty much his debut. The first Blueprint was 2001. Him and a guy by the name of Just Blaze were the main producers on those albums. And he wasn't Kanye West then. So this time, you know, to see the difference. And now, before he was just along for the ride, this time he has opinions about the song's direction and everything. So it's like a good push and pull that's, you know, making for some fantastic music.
And in a business where everyone is, you know, obviously always bragging, because that is the heart and soul of rap music, is bragging, he has the reputation of an egomaniac, which is quite an achievement in that field. Is rap too egotistical?
One, the competition of it states that, you know, you have to put down your flag. But two, you got to figure where we're coming from. A lot of us have never seen anything, right? And the next day we're millionaires. So now we're actually happy.
But will there come a day when rap will move beyond that? Will there come a day when you will feel the need to tell everybody how great you are?
It has to if it's gonna be around for. I mean, because you got to figure rap is fairly young.
Yes, it is.
It's a genre of music.
Well, 30 years.
Well, it's getting up there now.
Right.
But
like, I never understood how people, the regular person who's buying the record, sometimes doesn't feel put down by the record.
It's aspirational.
In other words, they see themselves as you.
Exactly.
Although that's not actually going to happen.
Well, it takes a level of being gifted and a high level of working really hard. Yeah.
But like, take a song like that one you did, I think it's with R. Kelly. Somebody's girl is at this party, and you're gonna fuck her. Now, you know, the Beatles...
She's coming home with me.
Right,
Real work.
But, you know, like if the Beatles wrote, she loves you, yeah, 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 and I'm gonna fuck her. I mean, it would just, I mean, people would not have accepted it.
Well, people, when you listen to that song, you put yourself in the orator's shoes. So
Wow.
you're singing it to someone else as well. And then that someone is singing it to someone else. So it never really gets on anyone's clothes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, the attitude toward women does reflect the male agenda. I mean, I have always admired the honesty there, because popular music was always bullshit. You know, it was always about, you know, these pop stars who were probably having, you know, groupie sex after the show.
Probably.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra, you know, obviously was, but they were singing, you know, "You're 3 times a lady." But after the show, they had 3 ladies, you know. I mean,
So it makes it accurate.
Yeah, okay. So, no, I'm saying it was much more real. But now you're married. How can a rapper who, you know, whose credibility has been so, like all rappers, involved in, you know, I'm, you know, the polygamy, really, you know, bragging about, how can you maintain your credibility if you're a married man?
Well, I don't know about for the other guys, but for me, again, my music has always been routed in some type of true emotion, which you know, then goes, if you listen to a song like Give It To Me, you know, I remember the story. It was like a Mary J. Blige party. That whole thing was based on a real, true story. So as I've evolved, right, so you can say anything on this show, right, cursing that. So I've seen you curse. So let me just say, you know, ain't no becomes Song Cry, which becomes Bonnie and Clyde, which becomes, you know, whatever song I made last week. So even in my music and those songs and my relationships and dealing with people have evolved as I have.
Song Cry.
Yeah.
That's a very touching record. And that's obviously about some specific person.
Yeah, but what happened was I took 3 different relationships and I made it one person. So that's you know, entertainment. You can do that, you know.
Right.
But it comes from a true emotion, with 3 different true emotions, and I made it into one girl. And
Right.
told the story.
So, and I love that song, The Power of the P-U-S-S-Y.
Yeah.
And you talk
It's
about...
a very thoughtful and insightful song.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
You talk about this woman, Sweet Cooch Brown,
Yeah.
and you claim she had the bombest pussy in town?
Yeah.
What town? What? I'm asking questions.
Get you a number right now. Yeah.
Oh, I notice, you know, when I listen to your old stuff, that you realize the technology has changed so much. Like in Girls, 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 you know, it's like write your number on a piece of paper. Well, nobody does that anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, Girls, Girls, Girls was an Elvis movie, right?
No. That's great.
So Elvis, they call him the king of rock and roll. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, the king of hip hop.
I better get life insurance.
Okay, last lyric I'm going to throw at you. I used to take for granted why they placed me on the planet. But now you know?
Yeah.
Why did they place you on the planet?
Well, there's an entire nation of people. That's why we have Rock Nation, right? There's an entire nation of people that, you know, I'm a guy from 534, 5C. You know, there was a guy who lived next door to me and you know, I lived in the project. So there's a whole nation of people that's seen my struggle. In fact, I got some guys over here from London who are you know, inspiring moguls, and they followed our whole model for Rockefeller. You know, so imagine the reach and, you know, not just the music, you know, the movements of what we were able to accomplish as, you know, raise the whole generation of, you know, people to want to do better for themselves. So, you know, that's my cross.
You did it. Yeah. You're a marvelous entertainer, and I know you don't do TV a lot. And thank you for coming by. The Blueprint 3, September 11th. Jay-Z, thank you. That's right. All right, we have another guest before we bring him out. You want to do a few new rules? Okay. New rule. You don't have to put the cap back on the bottled water between every sip. It's water, not a genie. Man has been drinking water out of uncovered, open-mouth containers successfully for thousands of years. They're called cups. New rule, there are no winners in the competition for brightest headlights. Congratulations, you've managed to flood the highway with the light of 1,000 suns. And what you've illuminated is a hellscape of veering, crashing drivers because you just blinded them. It's unsafe, and besides, with all that glare, I can't see when I'm texting. Please, sir. I don't need your pity. New rule, Sealy Posturepedic must rewrite this ad to say what they really mean. A mattress so comfortable, you'll doze off during 69. New rule, if the guy who makes up the poll questions at CNN doesn't want to do it anymore, he should just quit. This is an actual recent poll question. Would you like to live on the moon? And the shocking results, no. As it turns out, we would not like to live on the moon. This is the cable news equivalent of being in a dead-end relationship with an idiot. What are you thinking? I don't know. I guess I was just wondering how many Americans would like to live on the moon. The very definition of a smattering of applause. New rule, no more studies warning us about how college students are binge drinking. What other kind of drinking do you think 20-year-olds are doing? Wine tasting? Of course they're binge drinking. Hell, with this job market waiting for them, just be happy they're not breaking into your house and stealing your prescription drugs. And in a related rule, new rule, this one is for Mexican drug lords. If you don't knock off the violence right now, I'm going to stop smoking pot entirely. Just kidding, I'll get it from Thailand. All right. Let's bring this man out. Wow. He has been a deputy Peace Corps director. He has been a publisher at Newsday, a special assistant to President Lyndon Johnson. He's written many books. The most recent, Moyers on Democracy, is now out in paperback. But he's best known for his work with CBS News and now PBS, where Bill Moyers' Journal is seen every Friday. He's won every major award, including 30 Emmys. Please welcome the conscience of American journalism, Bill Moyers. Bill, what an honor. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I can't tell you, I mean that. That is a real honor. There's no one like you. I was going to say there's too few, but there's nobody. So I'm going to pick your brain for the next half hour, if I may.
That won't take a half hour, but go ahead.
Well, it'll seem shorter. The first thing I want to ask about is the healthcare debate, because that is obviously what is dominating the news in this country now. You are in a unique position because you were there for some of the fights in the 60s, like civil rights, Medicare, Social Security. How do you compare this fight to those fights?
This is harder because there's more money on the side of those who oppose health care reform than there was in the 60s. Money was important in the 60s, but it wasn't as pervasive and as powerful as it is today. Having been there, I find it hard, Bill, to understand why this country has not embraced the notion of health care as a common human need to which everyone should have access regardless of their economic resources. I just don't understand that.
Well, does it have something to do with the Democratic Party, which was the party of progressive issues in the 60s? And it doesn't seem to be a party that can any longer really stand up for progressive causes the way it used to, or win those policy battles. Why is that?
I don't think the problem is the Republicans. They are totally against health care reform. Why shouldn't they be? They don't want to give Barack Obama the greatest progressive breakthrough in domestic policy since Lyndon Johnson and Medicare. It's to their interest as a party not to let Obama get an advantage that'll help reelect him in 2012. So don't count on the Republicans. The problem is the Democratic Party. This is a party that has told its progressives, who are the most outspoken champions of health care reform, to sit down and shut up. That's what Rahm Emanuel, in effect, the chief of staff at the White House, told progressives when they stood up as a unit in Congress and said, no public insurance option, no health care reform. And I think the reason for that is that in the time since I was there, 40 years ago, the Democratic Party has become like the Republican Party, deeply influenced by corporate money. I think Rahm Emanuel, who's a clever politician, understands that the money for Obama's reelection will come primarily from the health industry, the drug industry, and Wall Street. And so he is a corporate Democrat who is determined that there won't be something in this legislation, if we get it, that will turn off those powerful interests.
The Democratic Party though. I mean, Lyndon Johnson was the last Democrat who really, it seemed to me, won an election based on democratic values and democratic virtues. Every other Democratic victory that's come after it more or less came because the Republicans screwed up so badly. I mean,
That's right.
You know, I mean, Nixon, Gerald Ford, okay, that was a Republican scandal. Then we got Jimmy Carter. And then after the first Bush, that was not a successful presidency. We got Bill Clinton. And now we have Barack Obama after the disaster that was the next Bush. It seems like the Democrats can't win an election on their own.
The two reasons for that: we have had a conservative revolution in this country over the last 30 years, and a lot of the values in politics have shifted in that direction. But you've also, go back to what we said a moment ago, money in politics. You've also had in the last 30 years the Buckley versus Vallejo decision by the courts, which allowed money to flow into politics in
Right.
a flood.
Saying money was free speech.
Right, saying money was free speech.
Where did they get that?
Well, it goes back to the efforts in the last part of the 19th century to begin to give corporations the right of personhood.
Right.
And that's what it. So if you as a citizen can contribute to a party, a corporation should be allowed to contribute to a party. That's the way the legal rulings have been going. But money has flowed in such a flood into both parties that the Democratic Party gets a lot of its support from the very interest that when the Republicans are in power, financially support the Republicans. You really have essentially, except for the progressives on the left of the Democratic Party, you really have two corporate parties who are, in their own way, in their own time, serving the interest of basically a narrow set of economic interest in the country, who, as Glenn Greenwald, who's a great analyst and journalist, wrote just this week, those narrow interests seem to win, determine the outcomes. No matter how many Democrats are elected, no matter who has their hands on the lever of power, these narrow interests determine the outcomes, even when they have to run, in Washington, even when they have to run roughshod over the interest of ordinary people. And I'm sad to say that's happened to the Democratic Party. Look at the flow of money as it shifted from the Bush administration and the Bush Congress to the Democrats in the last 2 to 4 years.
Am I wrong to say that the two things that are at the very heart of our problem are greed and ignorance?
Well, we come back to the first point you made about health care. We are the only Western democracy that has not embraced universal health care as a means of social justice. Our health care system is run by the drug industry, the health insurance industry, and Wall Street, which means a relative handful of unaccountable executives and anonymous investors whose primary interest is in increasing the value of the company's share and raising profits. That's their interest. Now, that's a good business model because it's made a lot of money for the people who run those industries, Wall Street, drugs, and health insurance. But it's not the way we should decide who lives and who dies,
right,
and who suffers and who gets well. That's just not the way. And yet, because money is the measure of success today and profits, both parties serve the for-profit motive. That's why I would rather see Barack Obama go down fighting for vigorous, strong, principled public insurance,
right,
than to lose with a bill. Look, Business Week had a cover story last week. The insurers are winning. Everybody knows that the White House has already made a deal with the drug industry,
right,
promising not to import cheaper drugs from Canada and Europe, promising not to use the government to negotiate for lower prices. That deal's been cut. Much better that Barack Obama go back to this public insurance for everybody. Universal health care, run by the government with tough cost controls to which everybody can join, employees and individuals, and which puts the care of the patient back in the hands of the doctor.
And he never...
And lose. If he were to do that and lose this fight, this fall, I guarantee you it would reinvigorate the party that we all know is suffering now from not being sure who it is and who it's for.
And he never really effectively has, yet anyway, made it a moral issue.
He started just recently, just a few days ago, he talked about health care as a moral issue. But it is a moral issue. It's not an economic issue.
When Kennedy broached the civil rights issue, which was a much harder issue to broach than even health care in 1963, that speech he made, I've seen the tape many times. He says, right at the beginning, we are confronted primarily with a moral issue. It's been 100 years since the Civil War. We're still treating the Negroes, as he called them then, in a way as a second-class citizen. I haven't heard anything similar to that from this president.
Harry Truman in 1948, Bill, fought for Medicare, the first president to really get out there and fight for it. He lost. But because he lost in a principled victory, the AMA beat him, we were able, 20 years later, to come back and get Medicare passed. And when Lyndon Johnson flew to Independence, Missouri, to sign the Medicare legislation in the presence of Harry Truman, I thought, you know, you have to lose sometimes in order to win. And that's why it's more important. People are saying, well, better to have half a loaf. No, half a loaf doesn't feed the crowd. It doesn't. It's better not to have a half loaf than to lose with the whole loaf out there that would serve everybody. And then come back and fight for it again.
You helped make famous the author Joseph Campbell.
Yes.
And one of his great quotes was, if you want to change the world, change the metaphor. And we read metaphors all the time in the paper from politicians. A rising tide lifts all boats, for example, is a great metaphor that's been used by politicians, usually on the right. Not really a true metaphor, is it? What would be a true metaphor that we could use now that would change this?
We're all in the same boat. That would be the metaphor. And that's the moral, the moral message that America would send by adopting health care as a human need to which everybody should have access. The moral message would be that we are in this together, that we care about each other. All of us who have means will give up something in order to make sure that everybody has health care. I don't want to live in a country where I'm on a hospital floor getting an operation that costs $25,000 and 2 floors above me somebody's being denied that same surgery because he or she has no money. What kind of civilization is that? What kind of moral order is that? It's not. It's an order where money, as you said earlier, some things money doesn't buy. It won't buy good public libraries. It won't buy good public schools. It won't buy good and some things do not have a price tag on. They have a value system attached to them. And health care for everyone, universal health care for every citizen, irrespective of your resources, is representative of a deeply moral society. And what do I mean by moral? A society that cares for the other. That's what makes us.
But can we go backwards? Can we get back to a society where we get the money out of the media, get it out of war, get it out of prisons, as it used to be for our first couple of 100 years?
Well, I don't think we'll ever get the money out of it, but that's what laws are for and movements are for, to make bad people do good things. And so we can pass laws providing universal health care, and people who don't like it will nonetheless pay for it, and one day they'll be glad of it because it will make us a better.
Absolutely. You know, I don't think the people understand this issue well enough to really render an opinion. I think this president should just drag them along. That's what President Bush would have done. I think he had horrible ideas, but he didn't really care what the people thought.
You know, I think there's a fear that Barack Obama will become the Grover Cleveland of this era. Grover Cleveland was a good man, but he became a conservative Democratic president because he didn't fight the interest. Teddy Roosevelt came up. People have been saying, well, Obama should be Franklin Roosevelt. No, I'd much rather see Barack Obama be Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt loved the fight. Right. He came into office and railed against the malefactors of great wealth. Right. He was glad to take them on, take on the barons and the tycoons, and people responded to him. I think if Obama fought instead of finessed so much, if he stood up and declared for what is really the right thing to do and what is really needed, instead of negotiating the corners away, instead of talking about bending the curve and talking about actuarial rates, if he would stand up and say, we need this because we're a decent country, I think it would change the atmosphere. In the last few weeks, In the last few weeks, the right wing has been winning the debate. How he lost control of the narrative, I don't understand. Well, yes, I do. He didn't find the right metaphors, as you were just saying. And he didn't speak in simple, powerful, moral language. He was speaking like a policy wonk to the world of Washington, not to a country of people who are hurting, where 47,000 million don't have insurance. Let him be a leader like that, summon the language and send it marching in the purpose of a mission like that, and he'll turn this around. But the right wing has been in the last few days, the last few weeks, carrying the argument, putting the Democrats on the defensive. Here's the party that lost, and the conservative movement that was discredited over the last 8 years by the DeLays and the Ralph Reeds and the Abramoffs. They're setting the agenda for a Democratic Party that controls the White House, the Senate, and the House. Something wrong in that. And I think it's because too many Democrats have had their spine surgically removed.
And what do you think about his policy in Afghanistan? You were around for the Vietnam debates and the escalation. It may have been why you left that White House.
I think it would be a tragedy beyond description for this young, bright, exciting president to be drawn into an endless war in the same way that the last young, bright, exciting president was intervened in Vietnam. I was there when Kennedy chose to send advisors to Vietnam. Then I was there when Johnson escalated. They both acted from noble intentions. Actually, they did. They wanted to stop communism in Asia, and they wanted to spread democracy. But the advisors became bombers, and the bombers became ground troops, and pretty soon a campaign to contain communism became a regional crusade. And 12 years later, billions of dollars later, millions of lives later, including 660,000 American troops, we lost. We lost because the United States is not good at that sort of thing. Here, Obama has 68,000 troops there. The generals are asking for another 20, maybe 30,000 troops. And when I saw that request the other day, saying that what we have there are not enough, I remembered a dream I had a year or so ago, right before Obama came into office, and they were talking about escalating in Vietnam. I was back in the cabinet room of the White House, sitting behind the president. He was talking to his military advisors. They were spread out around the table there. This is in the dream, seriously. And so he asked the military advisors and his national security advisors, how many troops should I send? 40,000? And a voice from back there said, not enough. 80,000? A voice from over here said, not enough. 120,000? And a voice from over there said, not enough. The military and the hawks in the administration will always say, not enough. And Obama has to say enough, or he's going to be drawn into. Now, we've changed the mission. We went there to capture Osama bin Laden. Bush did a good thing there. We didn't capture him. 8 years later, he's still at large. Now they've shifted the mission of the troops there to protect the villages of Afghanistan. 100,000 American troops can't protect the villages of Afghanistan. And now they say we're going to be there to build a nation. We're not good at building other nations. We're hardly good at building our nation. Look what's happening to our, if you're an Afghani and you look up and see Arnold Schwarzenegger and the legislature from Sacramento coming to build your nation, you're going to run, right? You're going to put up a no trespassing sign. We need to come home.
There are so many parallels, I hate to say it, between great empires that were on their decline and what's going on with this country right now. A sort of internal malaise, what we are debt-wise, how much money we owe the world, how much red ink is piling up. Do you think we're still a great nation?
We are a very crippled giant, suffering from self-inflicted wounds that if we do not treat and heal, will in fact bring us to our knees and ultimately to our doom. I really do believe it. And I don't want that to happen. I have 5 grandchildren. Grandchildren are great for reviving an old man's fervor about the future. You know, there are moments when you just want to say, no, we're heading in this direction. But you look at these grandchildren, it's like Obama coming into office. They inherited this mess that we left for them. I owe them an apology because my generation has done such a poor job with their future and their fate. We can't say, though, it's over. We can't. What makes us great, we're not smarter than other people. We're not more intelligent than other people. We're not wiser than other people. We have that First Amendment, that self-correcting faculty that enables people like this to climb up on the deck of the ship and grab the captain by the arm and say, that's an iceberg out there. It's that self-correcting faculty. We wait so long to do anything. How long did it take us? 250 years to free the slaves. Then it took another 100 years after a bloody civil war before the freed slaves got their true citizenship. Right. How long did it take us for women to get the right to vote? We wait a long time until almost the ship has sunk. And the rivets of the ship of state, I think, are in fragile shape right now and a collapse. If China recalled its debt, I think those rivets might pop as they do on the hull of a ship. We're close to losing the moral, financial, and economic muscle and the wisdom that makes a huge nation a great nation. But it's never too late. If people like this realize that they can get. What Obama needs right now is a movement of progressives who say to him, we voted for an end to the war in Iraq. We voted for health care for everyone. We voted to put our house in order, and we want you to do it. And that's what it would take.
I hope so. This week and last week, this whole month, there's been a lot of nostalgia about the 60s. It was the 40th anniversary of Woodstock. I noticed the Beatles are once again on the cover of the Rolling Stone.
Leonard Cohen is back.
Leonard Cohen?
Oh, yeah.
Was never really there for me, but okay. But I'm glad he's back. You were there. I know you famously once said that you did not realize that John Kennedy was fooling around when you were in the White House then, which is astounding because nobody could escape that sort of scrutiny nowadays. You've been very dignified about not gossiping about that era. Why don't you end that right now? Give us something about the 60s and the Kennedy-Johnson White Houses. That would be just a great piece of...
I wish I could add to the lore and the knowledge and the information that's come out. I can't. I mean, I was surprised at one revelation after another. I truly was, because it is, Freud said each of us experiences our own present naively, and I think that's true. I was very much an idealist. I was involved in the campaign of 1960, but I wanted to get away from politics right after the election and go and help found the Peace Corps, and I did. Kennedy finally persuaded me to do that, and then I wound up in the Johnson White House only by coincidence. I was in Texas at the time of the assassination, and I flew to Dallas and wrote a note to the. I'd worked for Lyndon Johnson in 1954 when he was in the Senate. And of course, I worked for him in 1960. But and the Secret Service man took the note. I said, Mr. President, I'm here if you need me. Secret Service agent took it to the president and brought it back and said, come on up. And I flew back to Dallas. And he never asked me to come to work for him. And I never said I'll come to work for him. But I wound up staying there 4 years. But I was working at first on the civil rights legislation, on the environment, on education, on establishing public broadcasting. And I wasn't. There weren't these rumors. There weren't these.
If there were, would it have disillusioned you from working for these men?
Well, I grew up a conservative, culturally and religiously conservative fellow in East Texas in a Baptist church, and it would have shocked me. Yes, it would have. What would it have changed my mind about? John Kennedy had the capacity to move me. I remember standing in the cold of the inauguration in 1961, January of 1961. It was cold. And through that icy wind came those words, to bear any burden. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I realized in years later that what John F. Kennedy was doing was inspiring me to think of myself beyond myself, to think of what I could become that was bigger than how I was thinking. And a great leader does it. Obama has that power. He has that capacity. Go back in your mind, in the picture in your head, to Grant Park. That very same Grant Park where in 1968, America was coming apart. Remember that? and the riots, the police riots and the riots of the protesters. And the other day I took I looked at the video of Grant Park on election night last year, Bill. The faces of those young people, the gleam in their eyes, the hope in their faces, the determination, the belief in the idealism was like that of 1961. I suppose if you came out and said to me that you and Obama were a couple, that would probably change my...
well, I wasn't really going to go that far with it, but I take your point.
Great presidents have the power to move people with words, and then by making the choices that back up those words. And that's the big challenge for Barack Obama now, is to back up that powerful, moving, inspiring rhetoric with strong decisions on that he can tell the people why he's doing it and say, this is what we're going to do.
You also have that power, and you've done it magnificently for all these years to move people with words. I am in your debt. Thank you so much for being on this show and for what you've always done. That is our show. I want to thank Jay-Z and Bill Moyers. We're going to take a couple of weeks off, and then we'll be back with our normal show September 11th. Thank you, folks.